What if you woke up one morning and you just knew? Not a feeling, not a fear, knowing that today was the last day. They call it deathbed visions or terminal lucidity, or simply they knew. And the strangest part, they weren't panicking. They were saying goodbye, giving things away, writing letters, telling people the exact date, and dying exactly then, exactly as they said. Tonight, 11 such stories from Reddit, from forums, from documented cases, and one theory that explains how it's possible. My name is Mariella. Welcome. A woman on Reddit. She wrote it a year after her grandmother died, because before that she couldn't.
Oh, Grandma was 82. She was healthy as 82 can be. She walked on her own, cooked, called every Sunday. On Thursday, she called my mother and asked her to gather the whole family on Sunday, not for a celebration, just because. I want to see everyone, she said. Everyone. Make sure it's everyone. My mother thought, all right, she wants everyone. We gathered, 14 people came. Grandma was in a good mood. She talked a lot. She laughed. She told stories we had never heard about her childhood, about grandfather, as if she was rushing to tell everything at once. At some point, she went around to everyone, each person. She hugged them separately, longer than usual. She told me, "You're a good girl. I love you. I've always been at peace about you." Pause. She still didn't understand. No one understood. On Monday morning, Grandma died in her sleep, quietly, without pain. The doctor said, her heart. We asked each other afterward, did she know? Of course she knew. That's why she gathered everyone. That's why she talked so long. That's why she held each person a little longer. The only thing I can't understand is how she was so calm. She wasn't afraid at all. She was just saying goodbye, like she was leaving on a trip.
And here is the strangest part of this story. Grandma never said it directly, but she arranged it so that everyone was there. She made sure no one was left without a goodbye. As if this was not her death, but her last gift to the family. Now a story that truly stops me. Because it has evidence, physical evidence, something that cannot be explained by memory or hindsight. After Death Communication Research Foundation Forum, Anonymous. He wrote this about his father.
Dad was an engineer, a rational man. Never believed in anything mystical, atheist. If something can't be measured, it doesn't exist. In September, 3 months before his death, he came to me with an envelope, sealed. He said, "Put this in a desk drawer. Don't open it until I tell you or until the time comes." I asked what it was. He said documents, just in case. I didn't think much of it. In December, Dad died. A heart attack. Suddenly, no symptoms, no warning. The doctors were surprised. And so, I found the envelope. Opened it. Inside, a will, account passwords, funeral instructions. Everything neat, everything planned. And in the upper right corner of the envelope, a date, written in his handwriting, in pencil, the date of his death, exact to the day. He wrote the date of his death 3 months before he died, rationally, like an engineer, without explanation. I still have the envelope. I've shown it to psychologists. They say Possibly he subconsciously sensed something was wrong with his health. But the doctors say there were no precursors to his heart failure. Nothing. My atheist father wrote the exact date of his death, and no one can explain to me how.
My son was 6 years old. He was sick, leukemia. We had been fighting for 2 years. The doctors said there was still a chance. A week before his death, he was in a good period. Not remission, but better. We were talking. He was playing, laughing. One evening he took my hand and said, "Mom, I'm going on Friday in the morning before breakfast. In East..." I don't know how I survived hearing that. I told him he wasn't going anywhere, that we would keep fighting. He looked at me, calmly, seriously, and said, "I know, Mom, but don't be sad. It's good there. I've already seen it." I didn't sleep that entire week. On Friday at 6 in the morning, he went, quietly, before breakfast.
A 6-year-old child named the day and the approximate time, a week in advance, and said, "I've already seen it," as if he had been there before. What had he seen? How did he know? How do children know this at all? Because there is not just this one story. In palliative medicine, this is called deathbed visions in children. And doctors who work in children's hospices say, it happens. It's not rare. Children often know.
Peter had never been sick. 41 years old, an athlete, non-smoker. Last checkup, everything normal. In January, he started giving things away. At first, I didn't pay attention. He gave me his tools. I never used them anyway. A bicycle to a friend, his garage to the neighbor temporarily, while he doesn't need it. In February, he called our mother and asked for all of Grandma's recipes. Everyone. He wrote them all down. Also in February, he wrote me a long letter. Said it was just in case, about what I meant to him, about shared memories. I decided he was going through something personal, a breakup, depression. I offered to talk. He said, "I'm fine. Everything's good. I just wanted to say it." In early March, Peter died. Aortic rupture. Instantaneous, without warning. The doctor said, impossible to predict. Impossible to predict. But Peter had given away his tools, his bicycle, written a letter, written down the recipes. I thought about it for a long time, and one day I understood. He wasn't giving things away. He was putting them in their proper places. He was tidying up, because he knew he was leaving, didn't want to leave a mess. Peter had never been sick, 41 years old, an athlete, non-smoker, last checkup, everything normal. In January, he started giving things away. At first, I didn't pay attention. He gave me his tools. I never used them anyway. A bicycle to a friend. His garage to the neighbor temporarily, while he doesn't need it. In February, he called our mother and asked for all of Grandma's recipes. Everyone. He wrote them all down. Also in February, he wrote me a long letter, said it was just in case, about what I meant to him, about shared memories. I decided he was going through something personal, a breakup, depression. I offered to talk. He said, "I'm fine. Everything's good. I just wanted to say it." In early March, Peter died. Aortic rupture. Instantaneous, without warning. The doctor said, impossible to predict. Impossible to predict. But Petir had given away his tools, his bicycle, written a letter, written down the recipes. I thought about it for a long time, and one day I understood. He wasn't giving things away. He was putting them in their proper places. He was tidying up, because he knew he was leaving and didn't want to leave a mess.
On the NDERF Forum, Near Death Experience Research Foundation, there is an entire section on deathbed visions, thousands of them, from all over the world, with one common element. The dying person sees someone they have lost, and that someone says, "Soon, it's time." The author is Robert S. He writes about his mother.
Mom was 78. She had been ill, pancreatic cancer. We knew time was limited, but not exactly how much. 3 days before her death, she suddenly became very calm. She stopped complaining about the pain. She smiled. We assumed they had given her something stronger. Then she said she had seen Dad. He died 8 years ago. She said he was sitting right there. She pointed to a corner of the room, and smiling. He looked so young, she said, just like he was when we met. I asked what he was saying. She said, nothing. He was just watching, and she knew he had come for her. For the next 3 days, she was in a strange state, between us and somewhere else. Sometimes she talked to someone we couldn't see. She laughed. Once she said, "Wait, I'm not quite ready yet." On the third day, quietly, in her sleep, with a smile.
In palliative medicine, this is called deathbed visions, visions of dead loved ones before death. According to various studies, between 50 and 80% of dying patients report such experiences. Science says hallucinations of the dying brain. But then why do they always see the dead? Why not the living? Why not strangers? Why specifically those they loved and lost? Stop. Because before we go further, we need to talk about what this actually is. What science says about people who know in advance. First, terminal lucidity. This is a documented medical phenomenon. When a person with severe brain disease or in a comatose state unexpectedly regains consciousness shortly before death, they speak, they recognize loved ones, they say goodbye, sometimes they even get up, and then they die. This happens with patients with dementia, Alzheimer's disease, brain tumors. Medicine does not understand the mechanism. It simply documents that it happens. Second, deathbed visions. As I mentioned, between 50 and 80% of dying patients report visions of deceased loved ones. The American Journal of Hospice and Palliative Care published a study. In the majority of cases, these visions calm the dying person, reduce the fear of death and physical pain. Third, foreknowledge of death. Here science is more cautious, but there are documented cases of people with no medical grounds, with perfectly normal test results, predicting their own deaths accurately, with a date. The official position: unconscious physiological signals that the brain picks up but does not consciously interpret. The heart begins to work slightly differently. The brain knows, but doesn't understand that it knows, and this expresses itself as a premonition. But here is what is wrong with that explanation. Petir, aortic rupture, sudden, no physiological precursors. What exactly was his brain picking up? A 6-year-old boy with leukemia, in a good period. What exactly did his brain detect and translate into Friday before breakfast? And so some researchers propose a different theory, a more radical one. Time is not linear in the way we perceive it. Consciousness may have access to information about the future. Not everyone, not always. But in certain moments, especially at the boundary of life and death, this access opens.